the watchdog group Human Rights Watch interviewed people who'd been detained during recent protests. Some of them, ages 16 and 17, described to the group what Syrian security forces did to them.
Electrocution with cattle prods, beatings, being hung.
Human Rights Watch say the attacks on bakeries, bread lines and hospitals in the north of the country amount to war crimes.
We have been able to document abuses by the opposition, and we have strongly condemned those abuses.
Human Rights Watch says Takfiri insurgents in Syria have killed at least 190 civilians and described the August attack as the first evidence of crimes against humanity by foreign-backed militants.
A school in Dayel last autumn. The Human Rights Watch report says at least 1 in 5 Syrian schools are no longer functioning.
Peter Buckert, hat den Giftgaseinsatz vom August untersucht.
YouTube-Videos werden mit einem Datum kalifornischer Zeit versehen. Wenn der Angriff also um 3 Uhr morgens...
Syria is the major human rights challenge of our time. And as there is this very brutal, real war that's going on the ground, there is an information war, propaganda war that is being played by all sides. Human Rights Watch's role is to arrive as close as possible to the truth.
هلا روح اتفرج على البيضات ولا كائن حي بشري فيها.
In Baida, which was an opposition-friendly village in the middle of government area, there was just no way for us to get there. So what can we do in the meantime? We started looking for survivors. Using our extensive networks, slowly we started finding them showing up in Lebanon and in Turkey and in parts of northern Syria. And then interviewing them one by one, in great detail, we slowly pieced together what happened in that terrible afternoon of May 2nd.
فبنفتح الباب وبنفوت على غرفة.
أم حامل وطفلها وأطفالها الخمسة.
فتنا لقينا أكثر من 25 جثة كلهم أعدام بالرصاص. نسوان وأطفال، ليش يعني ما حدا بيعرف.
This is still image from the video footage of the women and babies and children who were found in this part of the village here. We spoke to more than 15 witnesses and survivors in Al-Baida, but there were a number of key witnesses, including a woman, Muhammad, who had seen the perpetrators, the government forces and the pro-government militia, take away her husband and 2 sons and execute them.
نحن هون ما عاملين شيء، ليش هيك عم تعملوا معنا؟ قال له ولا بس بتحكي. فهون قوصوا كتفه بين الكتف ورقبته.
The information she gave was extremely powerful.
المجزرة كلها اللي صارت ازاي بنظري قبال عيني. الشبيحة الناس حامل السواطير وناس حامل الأسلحة. العناصر البرة كلها لابسة مموه ولابسة زيتي، عسكري زيتي. ثاني يوم الجمعة حرقوا، بادوا البيضة إبادة.
What she had seen that day allowed us to reconstruct many details that otherwise would not have been documented. One witness told us that the soldiers who entered her home had a khasa, special written on their armband. This information is confirmed by video footage filmed by TV stations close to the Syrian government that were on the outskirts of Baida and that interviewed regular soldiers as well as members who identified themselves as National Defense Forces. Our role is to cut through the fog of war and to say, these are the perpetrators. It takes time. In the case of Baida, it took us 2.5 months to find enough witnesses from enough neighborhoods to be able to say, we have enough pieces of the puzzle that we are certain of the information we have. Umma Muhammad wants justice. She wanted her story to be told. And by telling their story, by telling it in a way that the facts are not disputed, you shift the burden on the perpetrators. But there's one thing that's clear. People will remember Baida now.
So I wanted to ask you some questions about the attack on your house. Let's go downstairs.
طيارة حاولوا بجو ليك طيار ليك طيار ليك طيار ليك طيار
So the helicopter dropped one bomb here.
We're there to document abuses, whoever is carrying them out. We don't take sides. We get as close as possible to where the abuses took place. We talk to those most intimately involved, whether they're the victims, whether they're witnesses, in some cases perpetrators. We corroborate. We've also developed a real expertise in the field of analyzing video footage, photographic evidence, satellite imagery. We use doctors' reports, hospital reports. And all this we piece together to provide a credible account of what happened and who was responsible.
One of the first images that emerged from Ghouta is a video showing a room full of children dead, many of them in their pajamas, without a single injury on their bodies. And immediately we knew that this was a crime of a completely different magnitude.
يعني مين ضل من عيلتك؟ مين ضل من عيلتك طيب؟
بس أنا بس
Ghouta is completely surrounded by the Syrian government. We knew we could not go on the ground, but that doesn't mean we can't carry out our investigation. So we began with the videos that appeared on YouTube. Then over Skype, we interviewed the activists and the eyewitnesses and the first responders and the doctors. We saw symptoms which indicated that people had been exposed to a nerve agent, the foaming at the mouth, the lips turning blue, the pinpoint pupils. We identified a rocket which is not in the standard identification manuals. So we contacted the activists inside Syria, and we asked them to take photographs with a measuring tape of all of the different components of this bomb. We immediately posted them on a specialized network we have developed consisting of military experts and weapons identification experts from around the world to ask them to help us identify the weapons. Identifying and reconstructing the weapons used in the Ghouta attack was of fundamental importance because these are very large rocket systems. They have never been seen in the hands of opposition fighters, and they will be very difficult to hide. Our investigation indicates that both the 140mm rockets and the 330mm rockets used in this attack were in the stockpiles of the Syrian regime. We have the transfer records to prove that, and we also have videos of them being fired by Syrian soldiers during this conflict.
Who did carry out this horrific attack? The UN weapons inspectors already in Damascus ought surely to be well placed to find out. But maybe not. Their mandate is to establish if chemical attacks have taken place, not to name the guilty.
The UN investigators were not allowed to assign responsibility for the attack, but they left important clues in their report. They were able to look at the rockets on the ground and establish the trajectory, the direction from which the rockets came. But when Human Rights Watch took those trajectories and mapped them out, we were able to establish that they were fired from government-controlled areas. It pointed another finger of responsibility directly to the Assad regime.
Human Rights Watch finds that Syrian government forces were almost certainly responsible for the August 21st attacks, and that a weapons-grade nerve agent was delivered during the attack using specially designed rocket delivery systems.
Part of Human Rights Watch's methodology is not only to name and shame the abusers, but also to name and shame the supporters of the abusers. We need to put maximum pressure on the backers of the Syrian regime to end the abuses.
Well, Mr. Roth, let's get realistic. If you have such persuasive set of evidence and proof, then submit it to the United Nations, submit it to the Security Council.
Everybody, when they think about Russia and the Security Council, they think about Niet. Are you going to condemn, the clear, widespread bombing and targeting of civilians in rebel-held areas? Niet. Are you going to send perpetrators on both sides to the International Criminal Court? Niet. Of course, nobody trusts the Security Council at this stage because of the Russian veto. But I wish it were otherwise. I wish Russia were sitting.
When Putin wrote his op-ed in the New York Times, trying to support the version of events of the Syrian regime, we immediately responded with an article pointing out the misinformation that Putin was peddling, the lies and half-truths.
It was one of the most reprinted op-eds that Human Rights Watch has ever written. Even if Russia wanted to continue to deny that Syria was responsible, the facts were now established.
The United Nations has finally agreed on a resolution to destroy Syria's chemical weapons. On Friday, the 15-member Security Council voted unanimously on the deal put forward by the US and Russia. The passing of this resolution breaks a 2.5-year deadlock at the UN over Syria, where at least 100,000 people have been killed.
When we established who was responsible for the chemical attacks in Ghouta, it helped change the international momentum towards holding Assad accountable. And for the first time, Assad was forced to take action. By taking it one investigation at a time, we are establishing the truth about what's happening on the ground, establishing who's responsible for these atrocities, and ultimately building the momentum we need to stop the killings in Syria.